I watched her documentary before she ever became big. I think I seen it on PBS, on Channel 13. You can tell she was a rough. She had anger problems. She was not ladylike. She was nigga boy, tomboy. Nah, and she, nigga, she went through the process and corrected what needed to be corrected to represent what a champ is. She ain't no Layla Ali. None of our new youth are what our old stars used to be. They got their own mind, they got their own identity. So nah, man, homie, they picking on Claressa, and can't nobody whoop her. So
get ready, because what you're about to hear is not gossip, not another internet rumor, and definitely not random drama made to trend for a few days online. This story hit people differently because when Charleston White started speaking about Claressa Shields and Papoose, he didn't come in loud, emotional, or reckless. He didn't scream accusations or try to tear anybody down. Instead, he did something way more unsettling. He slowed everything down and started connecting dots that most people had already seen but never really questioned. And once he laid it all out, the entire picture surrounding Claressa Shields and Papoose suddenly started looking completely different. What once looked like a perfect celebrity love story started feeling more like a carefully managed arrangement built around power, image, protection, and silence. And according to Charleston White, that silence everybody praised for years may not have been loyalty at all. It may have been strategy. For years, fans looked at Claressa Shields as one of the toughest and most unstoppable figures in sports. Her story was inspiring. She came from struggle, pain, and hardship and turned herself into a world champion through discipline and pure determination. People respected her because she felt real. She wasn't polished like traditional celebrities. She felt raw, emotional, aggressive, fearless, and authentic. Charleston even talked about seeing her documentary years ago, before the fame exploded, back when she still looked rough around the edges and completely unfiltered.
So Claressa Shields wants to have babies with Papoose while he's still married to Remy Ma.
They gonna look like African kids, Ugandan babies. Yeah. They ain't gonna know if them babies Nigerian, Jamaican, or Haitian. But they gonna have some pretty chocolate skin. Don't know if their hair gonna be too straight or wavy. They may have African hair. But they sure gonna be nigga kids. Yeah. They gonna be some smart kids that know how to fight.
According to him, that version of Claressa was genuine because she hadn't yet been transformed into something larger than herself. But over time, as her fame grew and the spotlight got brighter, Charleston believes something changed. The fighter slowly became a brand. And once somebody becomes a brand, everything around them starts operating differently. Brands cannot afford chaos. Brands cannot afford vulnerability. Brands survive through protection, control, and carefully managed narratives. That's where Charleston White's breakdown started getting uncomfortable. He argued that the real story was never about Claressa's boxing ability, because nobody can deny her greatness inside the ring. Instead, he focused on the machine around her, the image protection, the media narratives, the way criticism seemed to disappear before it ever gained momentum. Charleston suggested that modern celebrity culture no longer just creates stars, it builds systems around them designed to protect investments at all costs. Once someone becomes valuable enough financially and culturally, questioning them starts feeling forbidden. And according to him, that's when real control quietly begins. Not loud control that people immediately recognize, but subtle control disguised as support, loyalty, and protection. The public sees championship belts, interviews, red carpets, and smiling photos, while behind the scenes, an entire structure is working to keep the image stable and profitable. Then, Charleston shifted the conversation toward Papoose, and that's where the internet really started paying attention. He never directly attacked Papoose or called him manipulative. In fact, Charleston actually praised him in certain ways. What he focused on instead was Papoose's silence. According to Charleston, silence is not weakness. Silence is discipline.
Yeah, that nigga Papoose. And this is why I say that. You ain't never heard no hoe come out and say nothing bad about him first. Even when his hoe was doing wrong, he wasn't running to the internet bashing him. And he don't speak much. He's a man of silence, so that means his words are important to him. I done seen him get with 2 women, and it seemed like he brought the best out of both women. Yeah, I don't know too many niggas that go hold their girl down when they go to jail.
He pointed out that despite years in the public eye, people rarely hear explosive drama connected to Papoose. No public meltdowns, no reckless interviews, no emotional social media breakdowns. He remains calm, measured, and controlled almost all the time. Charleston argued that people mistake that silence for innocence, when in reality it can also represent strategy, because in today's celebrity culture, the loudest people often lose control first, while the quiet ones maintain power. That idea completely changed the way many viewers started looking at the relationship, because suddenly Papoose didn't seem passive anymore. He seemed calculated, patient, and fully aware of how to operate within systems built around image and influence. The conversation became even more intense once Remy Ma entered the picture. Charleston described her as the wild card in the entire situation because, unlike controlled celebrity brands, Remy Ma has always been outspoken, emotional, unpredictable, and direct. She never really fit neatly into carefully polished narratives. According to Charleston, people like that become difficult for industries to manage because they cannot easily be filtered or controlled. He wasn't claiming there was some giant conspiracy against her. Instead, he argued that systems naturally favor personalities that create stability and avoid unpredictability. In celebrity culture, clean stories sell faster, and controlled relationships are easier to market. That's why Charleston suggested that some voices stay amplified while others slowly fade into the background. Again, he never outright accused anyone of doing wrong. That's what made his breakdown so powerful. He simply pointed out patterns and allowed the audience to draw their own conclusions.
She also makes more money than him, similar to Remy Ma. So would you consider him a gold digger?
No. A player ain't never been a gold digger. That nigga's a player. Nigga, that smooth player, nigga. Now, man, now, you always supposed to play for the bank. My grandmama told me, if a woman really like you, it ain't nothing she won't do for you. Well, grandmama, how you know if she really like you? She'll give you her money.
But the darkest part of Charleston White's argument came when he started talking about modern relationships themselves. According to him, many celebrity relationships today function less like emotional partnerships and more like business arrangements built around mutual benefit. He asked questions most people never think about openly. Who controls the image? Who absorbs criticism? Who protects the brand? Who brings value? Who gains access? And once those questions start replacing real emotional connection, the relationship slowly becomes transactional, whether people admit it or not. Charleston made it clear that transactional relationships don't always look cold or fake. In fact, they often appear loving, supportive, and loyal from the outside. That's why people miss the signs. Control rarely arrives looking dangerous. Most of the time, it arrives looking helpful. It shows up as protection, guidance, emotional support, and security, until eventually the line between love and dependence becomes almost impossible to separate. Then Charleston shifted toward the topic of money, but not in the way most people expected. He said the internet is too obsessed with labels like gold digger and user, while completely ignoring the real issue, which is access to power itself. According to him, influence does not always come from owning wealth directly. Sometimes it comes from proximity to it. Access to the lifestyle, the opportunities, the visibility, and the protection that wealth creates can be just as powerful as ownership itself. Charleston argued that relationships built around alignment often become stronger than relationships built around emotion, because both people understand the role they play within the structure. One person may provide security and image protection, while the other provides relevance and access. Together, they create stability. And honestly, that interpretation made the entire situation feel even colder, because it transformed what looked like romance into something that resembled strategy. As Charleston continued speaking, his message became less about Claressa Shields and Papoose specifically, and more about how systems operate in general. He argued that silence does not just protect individuals, it protects structures. Every time fans attack critics for asking uncomfortable questions, they strengthen the machine. Every time audiences defend the brand instead of examining the reality behind it, silence gains more power. Charleston pointed out how modern culture often treats curiosity like hatred. The moment someone questions a public narrative, they immediately get labeled bitter, jealous, or negative. That creates fear, and fear keeps systems alive, because eventually nobody wants to risk speaking honestly anymore. According to Charleston, that's how image control becomes stronger than truth itself. Then he went even deeper by talking about the physical and emotional toll that fame and competition can take on a person. The endless fights, the injuries, the pressure, the constant attention, and the exhausting recovery cycles slowly wear people down mentally and emotionally. Charleston argued that when somebody becomes exhausted enough, dependence starts feeling natural. Having someone nearby who handles criticism, manages pressure, and creates emotional stability can start feeling necessary instead of optional. That's why Charleston said the situation stopped sounding like celebrity gossip and started sounding more like a warning about how power dynamics quietly form over time, not through evil intentions, but through comfort, survival, and emotional fatigue. By the end of his breakdown, Charleston White delivered the line that stayed in people's minds the longest. He said systems like these do not collapse through giant scandals, they collapse through irrelevance, not explosions, but slow leaks, small contradictions, awkward silences, growing distance, tiny cracks in the public image that slowly become impossible to ignore. According to Charleston, when relationships are built primarily on usefulness instead of truth, they rarely end dramatically. They quietly expire once the arrangement no longer serves the same purpose. And that idea changed everything, because suddenly the audience stopped looking for villains and started looking at patterns instead. Now, the real question is this: was Charleston White exposing uncomfortable truths that people were too distracted to notice, or was he simply reading too deeply into celebrity drama like the internet always does? Because depending on how you view it, this entire story either sounds completely ridiculous or disturbingly believable. And maybe that's exactly why so many people could not stop talking about it. Not because Charleston White proved anything definitively, but because once he framed the story this way, the silence surrounding everything suddenly started sounding different.